immediately a memory pops into my mind where my youngest daughter was, I don't remember exact age, but she was around the age of 20 to 24 months, around walking kind of age, right? And I was in Las Vegas for a pharmaceutical meeting. And I remember, working and not being present when she started taking that very first step. Like I wasn't there. My incredible nanny was there and got to see that. My husband wasn't there. We were both busy working. And it honestly brings tears to my eyes to even think about because she's getting ready to turn 15 and a sophomore in high school. And I have that memory very, very immediately when you asked that question, that memory popped into my head. That was 100% mom guilt.
Hello, Women of Fort Mill, and welcome to the Women of Fort Mill podcast. I am Leah Williams, joined by the best co-host, Kelly Hoover, and we are so excited to chat about a topic that every single mom has dealt with. I think every single mom in the world, I think it's fair to say that. It is something that we know we need to work on, and so today we are going to unpack mom guilt. What is it? How does it show up? How do we handle it? What does it look like in different phases of our life, depending on the ages of our kids? And even when they're grown and out of the house, I think mom guilt still exists. So Kelly, you're the best person to talk about this, I think, because you have so many insights and, have learned so much now that you're semi on the latter stages of, raising children based on the ages of your girls. I mean, one's going to college, which is crazy. But what does mom guilt look like for you now versus when your girls were little?
Yeah, mom guilt is definitely something that I do think everyone can relate to. We struggle with, we're aware of it. And sometimes it's, from other people, from social media, from our internal selves. So I definitely have dealt with mom guilt and still deal with it. And probably sometimes don't even realize that it may be the driver behind why I do certain things that I do, right? Because of mom guilt. So when I was younger, I think you may not realize this when you have young children, like Leah with a toddler, it may not be something that you're aware of until 10 years. But I think that there are times where you go through a specific situation and that is reframes mom guilt and how you handle situations in the future. And when I immediately think of my kids, you say, what was it like having mom guilt now versus when they were younger? Immediately a memory pops into my mind where my youngest daughter was, I don't remember exact age, but she was around the age of 20 to 24 months, around walking kind of age, right? And I was in Las Vegas for a pharmaceutical meeting. And I remember, working and not being present when she started taking that very first step. Like I wasn't there. My incredible nanny was there and got to see that. My husband wasn't there. We were both busy working. And it honestly brings tears to my eyes to even think about because she's getting ready to turn 15 and a sophomore in high school. And I have that memory very, very immediately when you asked that question, that memory popped into my head. That was 100% mom guilt. And now working for myself for a decade, I am sure subconsciously that mom guilt very much was a trigger for me and probably led me and pushed me more into controlling my time, right? Another thing I think now, when my girls were young, a lot of women, we choose to work or we have to work, right? So we're going to have these situations where we have to pay bills. We have to go to work. We have to show up. Therefore, we miss things. We cannot be there all the time. And there's this guilt of I think most women feel this guilt of I'm working versus being with my children. That was a very common thing for me. But as my kids went to elementary school, and I remember this transition happening, as they went to elementary school, and I was like, well, how can I be the working mom who works 50, 60 hours a week and still be classroom mom and be on the PTO board? And how can I take time away from here to give it to here? And I remember one of my friends sharing with me, asking my girls, do you want me to be volunteering in your classroom for an hour on this random Tuesday? Or would you rather me spend an hour with you from 5 to 6 o'clock, taking you to your favorite park and playing on the swings? And of course, my children were like, the park. I don't care if you're in my classroom. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I need to show up and be present in the classroom. But sometimes I felt when I reflected, I was like, was that more for me? and like more for my
Right.
status that I could do it all, or,
Yes.
I didn't realize it when I was going through it. And then now I age my girls being a sophomore and a senior, and like we're talking about college and we're talking about all these things. Mom guilt to me feels like I want to provide memories. I don't experience a ton of mom guilt now because I think I had a lot of it when they were growing up and I have been very
Mm-hmm.
aware of it. And I do own my time now. And so I always put them first, but I realize a lot of women can't do that. Right. So I think it is now, it's like, what is most important to my kids? What is most important to them? And it's more of creating memories. So maybe I don't spend as much time with my children now because they want to be with their friends. They don't really want to hang out with mom and dad as much, right?
Yeah.
But it is making that 1 hour, or that each month my girls and I do one activity one-on-one together. Every week we will spend at least 30 minutes to an hour of having that one-on-one time. And as they've gotten older and they've gotten jobs and they're busy and they're doing all these things, it may not look like on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, we're doing this. But even last night, my daughter coming in from spending time with the movies sat on the bed for 30 minutes and just talked. And
Mm-hmm.
granted, like I'm in bed, I'm tired, I'm ready to go to sleep. But I have realized as we age, for me not to experience mom guilt, you turn the TV off, you put your phone down, you engage in the conversation. And that has decreased my mom guilt because I realize like that's what she needs. She needs me to stop what I'm doing when she needs me. And that has decreased my mom guilt. But that's kind of what it looks like as my children have aged. I think it's something I'll always have though, Leah. And, I'm super curious about you because yes, I've gone through the toddler mom stage, but it's been so long for me, right? And it was a different phase. Like that was over a decade ago. So like as a toddler mom right now living in, 2025, what are the things that trigger guilt from you the most? Like, what does that look like for you in your everyday life?
Well, one thing that you said that I think is so valuable before I jump to, my toddler era, asking your girls what means the most to them instead of, like you said, assuming or thinking, I need to be the mom that everyone looks at and is like, oh, Kelly Hoover, she, is on top of the PTA. She's always at the bake sales. She's always on the field trips where everyone else, like, and your kids might want you to be there for that. But
Yep.
asking them, what's more meaningful and impactful to you? I am sure many times what I would think is wrong. So I love that now that your girls are older, you find out what is important to them. I love that so much. Oh, what triggers it? This kind of goes back to how you see yourself, what you want to be known for, what you think you're able to do, and all the pressure, many times self inflicted. And while spouse, other people can sometimes have a role in what they project onto you and what they think you should be able to do, I do think it's such a gift and an honor to be a parent. But sometimes, at least for me as a mom, I didn't place it as high of a priority early on, right
Mhm.
after I had Calvin, because I was so career focused, because
Mhm.
achievements meant that you were adding value and that you were successful and you were setting a great example for what you can do. And while that's great, I mean, it's wonderful to be a role model for your kids to say, look at what's
Mhm.
possible, look at what you can do. But early on, I don't think I even realized I was doing it. I placed that as this is really important. And being a mom, people kind of look down on that because anybody can be a mom. And I didn't realize there's two versions. You can be an amazing, fantastic, engaged mom, or you can just have the title. And just having a title doesn't mean that your kids feel all the love that you want them to. So
So true.
early on, I think that was a challenge for me. So, of course, I felt it. So, I was in this constant internal struggle between this is really important and I need to achieve and I need to be present. And anything that my work people need from me, I'm going to show up because I can't disappoint. And then being a mom kind of, I was still present, but it wasn't on the pedestal it should have been. So, over the last 2 years, that has transitioned. So while I have much less guilt now, because like you mentioned, you're very intentional. I believe I know what things are really important. And while we can't do both, we can't be with them
Mhm.
24/7 and work.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just impossible. So
Mhm.
you pick what you think the most impactful things are. And for me, that's, I get him ready in the morning. We spend a little bit of playtime. Then he goes to preschool. But because, and once again, this is a luxury that I sometimes take for granted, I get to dictate my schedule. So something comes up, I can drop things and go if he needs me, and I will. But evenings are, as soon as I get home, 2 to 3 hour time frame, that's Calvin time. And then weekends, unless he's napping, it's Calvin time. So yeah, it's been a big shift, but I still have guilt because, if he doesn't have a good day, I'm like, well, if I was there, he would have had a good day. Or, if he's not doing great emotionally, I'm like, well, probably doesn't feel my love then. All the head trash still comes. And while sometimes, at least for me, I think it can trigger a reevaluation of time allocation. So sometimes the guilt is productive, but then there's the other side of guilt that's just, you don't need it. You are spending time, they feel love and you're being intentional. So true. I still have this like two versions of Leah, like, you're doing a great job. No, you're not. So,
one thing you said though, that like the self-awareness, because I think in mom guilt, we're all in different phases. And the fact that you are aware of like where you were, where you are now, and maybe like where you're trying to get to is so critical. And it's so true because we're all going to have mom guilt. Like we're never going to truly get away from it. But the fact that you are so self-aware is a lesson that I think all of our listeners can take away from, because sometimes you feel guilt about having guilt, and you're like, okay, let's release that. Like, it's okay. Let's just embrace the fact that Leah, you have guilt. Kelly, you have guilt, and it's okay, but we're self-aware of it. So I'm really proud of you for that, because that's not always easy, especially, in such like being a mom. I mean, Calvin's so young, a lot of times women don't experience that or are self-aware of it till their child is much older.
I'm grateful. It has caused many shifts. It does. People always say having a business is the best way to grow personally. And while it pretty much is, I think being a parent is, because especially if you're a conscious parent, you don't want your flaws, your mistakes, your bad habits to transition down to your kids, or them to, have to pay for your trauma, your things that you haven't dealt with. So I think being a parent is really the best self-improvement. Well, it just requires so much of it. But you have this freedom, flexibility now that you run multiple businesses. But in the beginning, when you were starting your business, it's one thing to be in corporate, know you're going to get paid, have all the benefits, and then to say, okay, well, I'm going to make a major shift in my life. Now I'm going to be a business owner. And that comes with so much good. But that shift, it can be challenging. So what did you experience mom guilt wise when you decided, okay, I'm making this change? Because it takes a lot. Anyone that's had a business knows that it's not just, okay, day one, I have 1,000 customers. It takes a lot of effort. So did it change when you decided to change career paths?
Yeah, great question. And I think my immediate answer when I think about that is involving my children. And if I could give advice to anyone that goes through any type of shifts, whether it's a career shift, a, marriage shift, a relocation where you live, any sort of shift, is approaching your kids and involving them in it. And so when I left pharmaceuticals and decided to work for myself, like we sat down and had a family meeting. Now listen, my kids were going into kindergarten and second grade. They did not have a clue what I was talking about. They don't ever even remember me not being home. They don't remember me working in pharma and working that much and being gone. They don't. Thank goodness, but they don't remember it. But we still sat down and we had a meeting, and it was a meeting my husband and I had first about what it looked like from a time perspective, from a resource perspective. We had to pull back on things. I wasn't making the same income, not even close. So we had to pull back on cable and housekeepers and all the extra luxuries that we had. And we talked about it. They didn't really understand. They were like, well, okay, like what, we can watch Disney, we can watch movies now. We don't have cable to watch Disney channels. But it was always involving my children. So any shifts we've ever made, when we opened sport clubs, we talked about that. Our kids are very well aware of every type of business move we make. If we are, saying, hey, we're making a shift and this is what this looks like. We haven't moved since that has happened, but I would handle it the same way. If there's our time, I have 3 times a year that we have like a reset family meeting. And I think a lot of this comes from it. It's like right before school starts, at New Year's, and right before summer starts, because these are very specific times in children's lives where you're having a schedule shift, right? And so we sat down, and what that allowed to do is it allowed us to me not to have that guilt. when I was working every night, every day and every night. And instead of giving the kids baths, I was working.
Right.
I missed out on that. And it allowed me to have less guilt because I was like, we talked about this. They're supportive in this. And we set a goal. It's like, hey, when this goal is achieved and you guys are supporting it, this is what we're going to do. And so we always had these type of family goals. And it may sound a little selfish, but that allowed me to have less guilt. And I think as my kids have gotten older, when we've had that shifts, I've gotten a little bit better at that.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think it's important. I think my husband and I, we are very big on bringing our children into decision making and preparing and like helping them make those decisions because they feel included. Now, listen, they may give us ideas and we may not ever actually do them, but we may. But at least they feel like they've had their opinion and their part and they're just as important. Just because they're a child doesn't mean that their opinion doesn't matter. And I think you can start that really young, and that's important. I think that that's super important. So tell me, like, as far as like shifting, as far as your guilt, I feel like, I know you and I've talked about this personally, but social media and guilt from social media. Do you feel that a lot of our guilt comes from social media or even like what other moms think of us based off of like what we're doing? I mean, how do you feel like that plays a role into your life and to others' moms, the guilt that we feel?
I think it's a huge component, but it's only as impactful as we allow it to be. And I say that coming from a standpoint of I've let it impact me to different degrees. And the more I have just, Mel Robbins did and just been like, let them think whatever. I don't really care because their opinion has no impact on my life. It has allowed me to let go of more of it. But, we still scroll and we still see, oh, wow, their house is perfectly cleaned. They're so engaged. And we have no idea what their bills are, what their actual schedule. I mean, we have no idea. We're making all these assumptions, but yet we still do it. I still do it here and there where I feel like now, if anything, it is more motivating to me. I don't use it as I just think, you know what? Good for her. She's able to do this. She's intentionally making time in the middle of the day to take her kids to the park. Whereas I'm like, oh, wow, I don't know that I, could do that. But it's become more of instead of a negative thing where I'm like, oh, I could never be at that level. I could never do this, or their life is perfect. When I see the good things that people are highlighting, now I take them in as that's so awesome that they're doing that. That's so great that they are prioritizing their kids and spending so much time. So I think the more you work on your subconscious, it helps you as you're taking in information, whether it's from social media or other outlets or people. It helps you perceive things differently. But I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm still going to scroll through and be like, wow, she's worked out by 6 a.m. and makeup's on and she's running out the door with her kids to take them to school. And like, oh, look, she's bringing them cupcakes in the middle of the day for their birthday. You see these things. And so, I think it's two-sided. I can see the good and think, man, good for them. That's, instead of I should or I'm not meeting up to this expectation, I try to look at it as, hey, that's a really good idea. You know what? Maybe I can set aside time for that or do something really special like they did for their kids. But when it comes to house being organized, beautiful, and clean, I definitely feel like, yeah, I'm not meeting that expectation.
Oh, same. Sometimes I'm like, if people actually saw what my office looked like, they would change their opinion of me really fast.
Well, no, my opinion of you, every picture I see, I'm like, because, you look behind, you're like, is your house clean? All of yours, it looks put together. But that may not always be the case.
Well, that's probably because I shoot in like one area and then that's all. I'm just like, clear all the stuff. No. But you're so right. There is this image that people do have. And, I even think, like as kids get older, they get into elementary school, they get into middle school. It's like the activities that they're doing or like the Halloween costumes or, like, are they homemade? Are they this? And right now in this exact week of life, all the kids, girls are painting jeans for the first day of school for their senior year. And so they're getting these parties together and they're like, oh, well, who's hosting the party and like, what does the party look like? And what do the snacks look like? And what is the theme? There's just all of these things. And I am like, this is amazing. And I really think if you can shift it to saying like, wow, like look at them and like how amazing that is. Like, I feel guilty I didn't do that for my daughter, because honestly, my daughter has like 2 things on her jeans right now. And we were out of town and she didn't get to go to any of these events. And I would have loved to have hosted an event, but it didn't happen. And I am not allowing myself to creep in and have guilt about that because we could compare ourselves with every single event, with every single post that we see. And I love what you opened it up with. Like, you made the decision. You're self-aware. I'm not going to allow myself to do this. It doesn't mean that you always follow the rules, but at least like, here I am. Yeah. Right. So it's so important. And, moms, as we close this episode out, if you're that person who is like carrying that guilt, like Leah was talking about, like I have talked about, and you're working, you're resting, you're parenting, you're being human, you're doing all these things. Like, I think we want you to definitely walk away with, you're doing enough. Like, you're doing enough. You are enough. Guilt will show up, but it doesn't have to like stay in your life forever. We want you to like walk away with this episode with like, Leah feels guilt, you guys. I feel guilt, but you're allowed to like be aware of it and just try and experience less of it and enjoy those moments. And if you feel that kind of voice creeping in going, you should do more, Leah, you should do more, Kelly. Like, we want you to pause and say, like, says who? Like, why should I do that? This is a perfect situation where like, I am enough. I'm doing enough, and give yourself grace. Like, we are raising humans. We are growing alongside while we're raising humans. Most of us have never done this before with your oldest child. You haven't, right? So I hope at this episode, I hope that you feel seen. I hope that if you see another mom that you've had this conversation with, or that experiences the same, would you hit the share button and share this specific podcast with them? I know it's a topic that sometimes is sensitive to talk about and people don't want to admit that they have it, but it's really good to normalize these things in our female community. And we didn't even touch on this, Leah. This is a whole nother topic, but it's not just guilt for being a mom, but we experience those guilts with our spouses as well, with our parents, with our friends. It goes along the way. So anything you want to add before we close out?
The only thing, and this is just coming from experience, we're all on a different journey, and I've definitely been guilty of comparing my journey. I might see the Kelly Hoover that's, oh, wow, she's at mile 29 and I'm at mile 3, and not take into consideration, okay, her life has looked totally different than mine. Her kids are a different age than mine. Everything is different. And everyone is not on the same journey keeping pace with each other because, our lives just look completely different. So, it's a reminder to myself, reminder to everyone else, where you're at is exactly where you're supposed to be. And if we feel guilt, it may be a sign that, what? I am running on empty, and it doesn't matter how much I do. I will always feel guilty because I'm just depleted and I feel like there's nothing left to give. So maybe that guilt is telling you, you have to make yourself happy. Like, this is why you're feeling guilty, is because you literally do have nothing else to give. So you constantly feel behind. So sometimes it can be the thing that makes you change your life, but it turns into a positive thing. So reminder to myself, all of us, our journeys, it's impossible for us to be at the same mile marker. We just can't. So there's no reason to compare. Kelly, you always feel
such a good point
here. So
you're so funny. Well, I think it was a great topic. I think that we had some great conversation today, and we just want to thank all of our listeners. Thank you for joining us. We are cheering you on. This is a beautiful, messy, and perfect role that we all play, and we all want you to know you're doing enough, you are enough, and just keep reminding yourself of that. So please share this episode with someone, share it out on Instagram, and tag us on Instagram at Women of Fort Mill Podcast. And if you have not signed up for our newsletter, we'd love for you to go to our Instagram, Women of Fort Mill Podcast, and click the link and get signed up for our newsletter. It's the best way to learn about all the episodes coming up, not only Leah and I talking, but all of our wonderful guests that we have and all the events that we do. And we know we've tweaked the podcast a little and we're adding some different topics. So if you're not in Fort Mill, we are so glad you are listening. And this episode specifically, and a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about are not necessarily meant specifically. They're for women here. They're meant for all women. So we'd love for you to share this with anyone, whether they're inside our community or outside. So thanks, Leah, for the conversation today. And we'll see you on another episode of Women of Fort Mill Podcast.